I became an executive director of a nonprofit organization at 39 years old over 3 years ago. And I want to talk about that here. There's multiple reasons of why I'm making this video. One of them being it's practice. I'm trying to be better to be on camera. We live in a digital world, and I'm also just trying to build up those skills. And I have a hard time with being in front of the camera. So if you know me in real life, please be gentle. If you don't know me in real life, and this is the first time that you see this video, also, please be gentle. Um, but I'm going to focus this video to talk about how I got to the position where I am today and what that position is, some of the challenges, opportunities, strengths that I think I've been able to acquire, while also talking about the things that I'm still managing and dealing with. So here goes. First, I am an immigrant born. Wait. I am an immigrant born in El Salvador, came to the country when I was about 2 years old. And so I come with the immigrant experience, but very much assimilated to the culture here. I still have very deep connection to my roots. Both of my parents live in El Salvador. They actually moved back. They retired and moved back after I graduated from my undergrad and bought a home. After selling their home here, they bought a home over there and they've been there for a very long time, since 2006, I think. Oh wow, 20 years. It's 2026. And so that's a little bit about my story. I grew up in the city of La Puente, which is 20 miles east of downtown Los Angeles, within the Los Angeles County area, and have been working in the nonprofit sector since it was actually my very first job, my very first real job. I was in the hospitality industry for a very long time as a server, as a hostess, worked across different restaurants, even a bartender at some point, until I went and got my undergrad and then found my first job in a nonprofit organization that worked closely with youth. I was in that organization for between 2 to 3 years until I decided to go back to school and get my master's degree, and I got my master's at UCLA for urban regional planning and was there for a bit. I worked and interned at different agencies and organizations while I was a student there for about 2 years. When I graduated, about a year after graduation, I was able to get a job in an organization that focused specifically around healthy lifestyles and what is it that we can do as community leaders to uplift community voices and make changes at the local level that would promote healthy lifestyles. And that could include active modes of transportation, increase access to healthy food offerings in communities that don't have an abundance of choices. And within that role is when I got to meet folks that worked in the organization that I'm in now. This video is not focused on that organization, the current organization that I work for, which is why I won't be naming it. But you can do a quick Google search and you know exactly what I'm talking about. But again, this video is really intended to be about me and practice for myself, but also hoping to offer insight and inspiration or, lessons learned from my own challenges to anyone that's watching this video. I was the program director at the organization that I'm at now. I was hired in 2017, so almost 10 years ago. It's actually going to be 9 years in a couple months. And served as the program director for some time until the executive director that was there, that hired me and that was there, decided to step down and move on to her next chapter. At that point, I was invited to support with a transition, and so I was part of the transition team. I served as interim executive director, but at that same time, concurrently, I was also pregnant. And so, because I was pregnant, someone had entertained the idea, and a board member specifically entertained the idea about me taking on the role of the executive director, and I quickly said no. It was not something I was attracted to, especially being pregnant with my second child. It's just I knew the demands of that position, and I couldn't do it. There was just no way that I could do it. I was not attracted to that role. I also don't think I ever aspired to be an executive director, to be completely transparent. I didn't go into the job wanting to do that, but I saw how it could have made sense for folks that were more on the sidelines of this job. Anyway, I was part of the transition team. We went through the process of hiring an executive director and did hire an executive director at that time, and that person came on board. I trained that person to as much as I knew about the organization, and within that role, I had the opportunity to serve, not only continue serving as a program director, but also dive into operations work. And so I became the programs and operations director, working closely with the executive director, getting deep into understanding the books and the finances of a nonprofit organization, specifically that nonprofit organization, and being able to provide guidance, but thought partnership to that new executive director also, until 3 years after that executive director, and there was a lot that's happened between then. I just don't think it's worth bringing some of those ideas or instances up. But in that 3 years, or after the 3 years, that executive director decided to step down. And she made it very clear to me, hey, I need to have these other priorities. And again, respect that. And it made sense for herself and just maybe where the organization was going. And then she also prompted me and said, hey, would you be interested in being the executive director? And I, again, quickly said no. It just felt like the level of demand, work, and attention that it needed. Having now 2 kids, young kids. I had my second in 2020 during the pandemic, which was a whole different, very challenging chapter of my career life. Having to be interim executive director while also training a new executive director and coming into the role as a director of operations and programs, having little ones. Anyway, in 3 years after the hired executive director came on team, a little after 3 years, decided to leave, and again proposed this idea. Again, I quickly said no. But then I was approached by other folks, both board members and even the new executive director. I'm sorry, the executive director that hired me, so the previous executive director. And, it was something I thought about very deeply. And again, quickly said no, but had to think about it. And went home, talked to my husband, said, hey, this is going to be a very demanding opportunity, but still an opportunity nonetheless. And a part of me kind of wants it, but another part of me doesn't. Like, I'm not 100% in, because I know how much work this requires, and the attention that it requires. And so we both assessed where we were in our careers. Thankfully, my husband has a pretty stable job. I mean, every job is as stable as it can be in that given time. But it is, as of right now, who knows? Anything can happen. But at that time, we made that decision. You know what? We can go ahead and have you, see if this is an opportunity that works for you, and just like dive in 100%. So I said, okay. After being convinced for some time, I said, okay, I'm going to take on the role as executive director for this organization. And I'll tell you that the hardest part of this role is, and it continues to be, is I don't think I ever really strived to be an executive director, which is why it's been so difficult for me to really see myself grow in this position. I've had the opportunity since then, so it's been 3 years. a little over 3 years now since I took on the role of executive director, and I've never cried more in any position than I have being in this position. And I hear about it all the time from other folks that take on this role, that it's lonely. It's extremely lonely. That it's underappreciated. I feel like I have an amazing team that I work with, but that underappreciation is honestly felt. It's felt with questioning of certain decisions being made. It's felt with, just not fully understanding the amount of weight that this particular role takes on in making decisions that, again, are favorable to the organization, but aren't always clear to someone that doesn't see that full picture of an ED. And that's hard. It's hard to explain that. It's hard to have people understand because it's not something that you can put on paper and say, look at everything that I have to consider. And as much as I've tried to do that, and I've had a lot of really great support, I've had a lot of really great recognition. It's nothing that it's anyone's fault, but it's hard to understand. It's not that easy to understand. So I was hired to make decisions ultimately to support the organization. And I feel like the reason why I took on this role, the reason why I eventually said yes, after having consulted with my family and figuring out if it works for my family, was also because I really had the opportunity to take on, like, I have a huge advantage, or had a huge advantage, I think I still do have a huge advantage of being able to see the organization flourish under two different leaderships that had two different styles. So again, we had the executive director that I helped in that transition, and then we had the upcoming executive director, and they both had their way of managing the organization that were, it was good. There were some, I don't know, challenges that they each dealt with, but I was able to observe and truly live under both. And I feel like a lot of my decision making is based on their either success or the mistakes that I observed while they were executive director. And so it's an opportunity of me to kind of say, okay, well, this is how it's been handled before. It wasn't received well, so maybe I should do it differently. Or this is how it was handled before and it was great, it was successful. So let me continue to do that or enhance it somehow. And so I think for me, I felt like, you know what? At the time that I was making that decision of being an executive director, I was like, I will likely have to hire someone, an executive director, me being part of the transition team, obviously along with the board, but I will be dependent on training that person and ensuring that that person has everything that they need to be able to make informed decisions again for the organization. And the organization had gone through a lot of different transitions, especially under COVID. I mean, there's a lot of nonprofits that suffered, and we were one of them. So in my mind, I was like, okay, do I have this drive to truly train someone and maybe eventually step down from whatever role I was in, not executive director, but let's say program or operations director, train someone and then kind of step away? Or do I have the patience? I mean, you need patience for training someone too, but do I have the inspiration, drive, and patience to implement whatever changes I think are worth the organization, worth an executive director doing for an organization to be sustainable? And so I decided, obviously, the latter, because I've been in that position for a really long time. And I think that the things that I struggle with is, again, I never aspired, I truly, transparently never aspired to be an executive director. It just wasn't on my cards to do. But I do think I'm really good at making executive decisions. Again, because of the advantages that I've had. I know this organization, every organization is different. A lot of folks talk about nonprofits being huge, some being voluntarily based and small. And I know this nonprofit. I know what it's good with. I know how it can be funded. And I can aspire on how else it can be funded or supported. But I felt pretty confident about making executive decisions for this organization, for the sustainability of this organization. And that came with experience. That didn't come because I took a couple classes. I was part of the organization for a very long time until I became the executive director. And as a program director, I managed some of our big government contracts. And that's really where a lot of the learnings come from, in addition to relationship management. But I'm also Latina. And this, the industry that I'm in is very, is dominated by not people of color. Um, it's it was and has been very difficult for me to kind of really understand my role. I've been asked to be the face of the organization, and I truly have a hard time with that. Truly, and I don't know if it's imposter syndrome. I don't know if it's just, because I'm shy. I don't think I am. I mean, I think I like to kind of stay behind the scenes. I'm that person. I like to be the sidekick. Again, I like to be strategic. I think I'm really good at being strategic and making informed decisions and learning from my own mistakes and being able to kind of carry on those learnings to other decision making. But I suck. I suck, suck, suck. Oh, that sounds terrible. I am not good at being the public face of the organization. This organization is also within a specific industry that I'm very passionate about, and I do at times feel like I'm not an expert in this industry. I feel very confident in leading a nonprofit organization because I understand the workings of it. I understand, how best to make decisions for the organizations. And if I make mistakes, that's okay. And I learn from them. But that's more nonprofit management than it is industry expertise. When this position sometimes asks the executive director to be and speak for the organization as an industry expert. So I struggle with that. I'm learning, I'm continuing to grow. But here's my first video of my own challenges. And I'll get into some personal stuff as it relates to my career in other future videos. Thanks for watching.